Welcome back to the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. I'm Christian Esparza, Alex Napoles with me. As always, it's time to talk some hockey. Alex, the NHL trade deadline was yesterday. Utah Hockey Club, not major players. They did make a trade that came in after the deadline had closed. Nothing major. They traded away, I'm spacing the name, She is his last name. But basically, he was a player that has been retired unofficially for a few years. Shea Weber. Yeah, there we go. Thanks, Sean. Shea Weber. He had been retired for a few years. And when they were the Coyotes, they picked up his contract basically to help out another team with salary cap space. So the Utah Hockey Club were paying $7 million to Mr. Shea Weber. And anyways, the hockey club traded his contract away to the Blackhawks, because the Blackhawks have to meet the salary cap floor next year. So basically, the hockey club got a free fifth-round pick. And I like this move because I compared it to what the Jazz did at the NBA trade deadline. Just picking up free assets. That's why you do that. That's why you pick up these contracts where you're just paying a player for being retired, right? When the Coyotes were in the situation they were in a couple of years ago, they were trading everybody away and picking up all these bad contracts and in a rebuilding phase. Now that's starting to pay off, and I know it's only a fifth-round pick, but it's like, hey, every step helps, right?
And I think more importantly, for this move for the Utah Hockey Club, you open up $7 million in cap.
Right, that frees up $7 million in cap space. The club is supposed to have
17.8.
I thought I saw 22. Regardless.
No. I mean for the move that they made.
Oh, okay.
For the move that they made, they opened up $17.8 million in cap.
So they're gonna have some money to play with.
A lot of money.
Whatever. Yeah. Well, they're gonna have money to play with, and now Logan Cooley is going to need an extension. I'm excited to see what that contract looks like because he's gonna get paid, and it's gonna be a long contract. Hoping he stays here in Utah for a very long time. But even after extending Cooley, they are going to be able to make a splash in free agency if they want. And we'll see. And I say if they want because they sat out of the Mikko Rantanen sweepstakes. He was kind of the big name to watch yesterday at the trade deadline. Utah was a team that had been tied to Mikko Rantanen. He was, of course, a longtime player with the Avs. He's got a couple. He has 2 100-point seasons to his name. He's a phenomenal player. Couple of 40-goal seasons. Really, really good player, but he ultimately ended up with the Dallas Stars. He was traded twice in the last 2 months, by the way. That was interesting. I didn't know the NHL could do that. Other leagues have rules against that. A player can't be traded multiple times.
Right. Yep.
But anyways, Rantanen, he goes from Colorado to Carolina to Dallas in a matter of 2 months. But Dallas is extending Rantanen. And now the Dallas Stars, they look like contenders for the Stanley Cup.
You know who else is really geared up?
Who's that?
The Florida Panthers.
Oh, my gosh. And sorry to bury on Sean. The Florida Panthers picking up Brad Marchand. That's a big get. This is a guy who was a captain for the Bruins. Thought he was a lifer. He was like 24 points away from 1,000 career points with the Bruins, I believe. So he's a franchise legend.
Let's check in with our local Bruins fan here in the studio, Sean Croshaw.
I'm down bad.
Down bad.
You didn't have a good day yesterday, buddy.
Yesterday was rough. The trade deadline happened at 1. It was supposed to end, and the news came out at 1:05.
Yeah,
so I thought I was in the clear 5 minutes. I was like, oh, we're good. And then Heartbreak City.
Sean, I obviously can't blame me. I don't keep up with Boston Bruins rumors. Was this a move that people had kind of seen coming? Like, was there speculation that Boston could move on from Mr. Marchand here at the trade deadline, or was this like a complete shock?
It was a shock to me. There was rumors within the last 2-3 days before the trade deadline, but it just sounded like
to Florida or just in general.
Most of those were to somewhere on the west, like Colorado or L.A. But, yeah, nobody ever mentioned Florida. But I guess management talked with him. They were trying to renegotiate an extension with him. They didn't come to terms, and so they talked to him about moving him, and he mentioned Florida as one of his destinations.
Oof. All right, well, we'll see how the Panthers look. I mean, Matthew Tkachuk, they put him on long-term IR. He has an injury from the Four Nations face-off, so he is out the remainder of the regular season. But
That's right.
come playoffs, the Panthers are definitely going to be contenders. Obviously, defending Stanley Cup champions anyway, so they were already going to be good. But yeah, this is a big get for them. Let's focus in on the Utah Hockey Club, though. They're coming off a 4-3 overtime loss last night to the Chicago Blackhawks. That one kind of stung because that's a team that Utah should have beat. This is a team they've beat twice already, and with the wild card race being how it is, I mean, they need every point. I don't think that's a stretch. And so it's nice to get the 1 point in the overtime loss, but overall, it definitely feels like they left 2 points on the board here.
Absolutely. And I was looking at the Discord last night on social media about this loss. You know, everybody was talking about it's a loss, but you still get the point out of it. But when you play the Chicago Blackhawks, who are a team that
20-35-8, by the way,
you should be.
It's a bad team.
You should be beating them.
Yeah,
you should be winning. And unfortunately, they didn't. Game goes to overtime. You lose in overtime. You still get the point, but man, the opportunity was there for 2, and that ultimately, I think, is what you want, and especially with how close the race is, right? Anaheim is right behind the hockey club. Still have a ways to go as far as the standing goes. Still has a lot of ground to make up, but I mean, they're still in the conversation. Then you have 2 points between you and St. Louis. You have 2 points between you and Calgary. Then you got 3 points between you and Vancouver.
Yeah, Vancouver right now currently holds that second wild card spot. Nobody's going to catch the first wild card team, whether that's the Wild or the Avalanche. Those teams are in the upper 70s of points right now. But the second wild card spot, Vancouver currently holds 69 points. Calgary's right there with 68. St. Louis also has 68, and then Utah has 66 points. So it is a very, very close race. Utah still plays Vancouver and Calgary, wrapping up the year. Those games are in a little while still. But the big thing for me with this Chicago loss, it's like if you want to be a playoff team, you've got to beat these. You know, you need to win the games that you're supposed to win.
Absolutely.
And so this one feels kind of like a gut punch, even though there's still a lot of hockey left to be played. Similar to the Aggies, right? We talked about in the first segment, the Aggies losing games to Boise State and Colorado State when they needed wins there. It's disappointing, and it's not a good feeling. But this is not backbreaking by any means for the club because still a lot of hockey.
No, it's not backbreaking, but I mean every point matters.
Yeah,
every point counts, and the fact that you don't come away with 2 against Chicago, it sets you behind. And I mean, you were already coming into the night 3 points behind that wild card line. You could have made up some ground. You could have been, a point behind St. Louis and a point behind Calgary, but instead you're 2, and you're ultimately 3 behind Vancouver. And we're just down to that point of the season where every point is important. Every point matters. Every point counts. You need all the points you can get to take it to overtime against a team like Chicago, a team, as we mentioned, you should be beating. It's a little disappointing.
Yeah. Although they sat out the trade deadline for the most part, they did get busy with some contract extensions. Olimata was given a 3-year deal. Ian Cole, Kevin Stenlund, I believe, were given 1-year deal.
Kerfoot.
Oh, Alexander Kerfoot. You're right.
Kerfoot, yeah.
1-year deals. And then, of course, Veggie, 5-year contract extension for their new top goalie. It seems Veggie has started the last several games between the pipes for Utah, and I like the move. Statistically, he's been a top 10 goalie in the NHL this season, and he's been really good, especially against Detroit. He had, it was 37. He's had 37 of 39.
39, man.
That's really, really good. So it's nice to see him obviously rewarded for his efforts there. It's a 5-year deal for around $5 million per year, slightly less. I always am wary in any sport. We're still learning hockey. That's no surprise. But in any sport, I'm always a little wary of rewarding a player immediately when the body of work isn't there, right? This is Veggie's first really good season. So you wonder how long this play is going to continue to improve. And so the length of the contract, 5 years, that's a pretty long commitment. But what I do like, $5 million a year sounds like kind of a lot right now, but I think the NHL salary cap is about to explode. It's about to go higher than we've ever thought of it being, right? So by the time the end of this 5-year contract comes, let's say Veggie doesn't work out. Let's say he's not their starting goalie. By the time, the third, fourth, and fifth years of that contract comes around, that $5 million number, that's going to be what backup goalies are making anyways.
Could be, yeah, you're right.
It could be.
Could be.
Maybe not quite, but still. But regardless, again, shouldn't talk like that probably because Veggie is having a really good year.
How dare you curse him?
He's been awesome, and I'm glad that he's there.
How dare you?
It's nice to take care of your guys. And it's nice. You know what was awesome, too? He had a wonderful sound bite the other day. He said, "I desire to be in Utah." Like, that's music to our ears. When have we ever heard that from a professional athlete?
I think Clarkson said that maybe a couple times.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
It's nice to hear it again. We don't hear it too often.
We don't. We really don't. And I think ultimately, look, you don't make any moves at the trade deadline as far as going out, bringing, guys in. But you lock down some important veterans for, another year. You lock down Olimata, who I think has come in and has done a really well job after being traded to.
Oh, he's been great. He was a great pickup.
And so you stick around. He's going to stick around for a little bit, and then you have Vejmelka, who I think has quickly become a fan favorite. 1,
yeah,
and 2 has been incredibly solid this season. So you make those moves to take care of the guys that you have currently in the locker room. You to keep them around for, for a little bit longer, and you ultimately reward the guys you have in the locker room now for what they're bringing to this team. And obviously, it seems like a lot of the players are happy to be here. A lot of the players are excited to be with this new organization, with this new team, and so. And you also set yourself up, right, with the move that you did make, you set yourself up for what could be a pivotal offseason for the Utah Hockey Club, right? Whether you make the playoffs or not, they're geared up right now to
continue taking steps forward.
To continue taking steps forwards and make some important decisions in the offseason on bringing in, whether you decide to make a big swing for a free agent or just something that can ultimately, with the growth of your young guys, adding a little bit more to ultimately get you over that line and compete in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's been exciting. I think the Olimata extension was really good, and I think that's another reason we've heard people talk about kind of why they sat out the trade deadline. They could have, if they really wanted to, they could have taken a big swing, but they're not quite there where they want to do that because it's not guaranteed they're going to make the playoffs, so it's not quite worth it. But also, when Sean Durzi went down early on in the year and then you trade for Olimata, that's kind of your trade deadline right there. That's the big trade for you. And so you secure somebody like Mata, who, by the way, has exceeded expectations since that trade. And then you get Sean Durzi back, you get Logan Cooley back, you get Dylan Gunther back. These guys all missed significant time with injuries. It's like you are adding players without having to add players. So it was a quiet day yesterday as far as not making any moves, but the Utah Hockey Club has already made their moves.
And they're they're in a position to, obviously right now they're in this tight playoff race. Can they make it? Won't they make it? It doesn't matter if they do or don't, but you're set up perfectly for what's to come, next year, 2 years, 3 years, and going forward.
Next up for the Utah Hockey Club, they get tonight and tomorrow night off. They will be back in Salt Lake City on Monday at home against the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's another tough part about the loss last night. It was the second night of a road back-to-back. They were at Detroit on Thursday, then at Chicago on Friday. So, yeah, back-to-backs are always tough. On the road makes it a little tougher, no matter who you're playing against. So it's going to be nice to have these guys back in Salt Lake City. That Toronto game is huge. I think there's going to be some juice there at the Delta Center.
All next week is big for this team.
Toronto currently 38-21-3. They are second place in the Atlantic Division, so they are firmly a playoff team. But I think it's going to be a good game there.
You get Toronto on Monday. You have Anaheim on Wednesday. Seattle on Friday, at Seattle on Friday. And then you go up Sunday to Vancouver.
Yep, at Vancouver. That's the biggest game of the month.
It's a huge game.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have to take care of business heading up to that Vancouver game, but I think, I think we'll have a better idea of if this team is going to or is not going to make the playoffs with this upcoming week, right? Because you have Anaheim and you play Vancouver.
Yeah.
Those are two teams that you're battling for that second wild spot. Well,
you can, right do yourselves a lot of favors there. All right, let's take a break. Coming up next, there was a pretty significant NFL trade that happened yesterday. We'll get into that next. This is the Saturday Show 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome back to the Saturday Show 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. I'm Christian Esparza, joined by Alex Napoles. As always, thanks for making us a part of your Saturday morning. Hope you have wonderful plans for your weekend. I know I do. I get to sit here and talk about sports.
We got to sit here and talk about Geno Smith.
Yesterday, the Las Vegas Raiders and the Seattle Seahawks involved in I thought this was funny. Some people were calling it a blockbuster trade. I don't know if it quite fits the bill for that, but Seattle sends quarterback Geno Smith to the Raiders for a third-round pick. One detail I thought was funny, this is the third-round pick that the Raiders received from the Jets in the Davante Adams trade. So the Raiders essentially traded Geno Smith, or they essentially traded Davante Adams for Geno Smith. Straight up.
Which, look, ultimately, I don't not like the move for the Raiders, right? I think Geno Smith is definitely a step up from Gardner Minshew, and he's definitely a step up from Aiden O'Connell.
Yeah, I get that, but it's like, why would you want to? He's 34. So it's not like they're trading for some young quarterback. Like, by the time the Raiders get good, they're not going to get good fast. By the time they get good, Geno Smith's going to be old and out of the league. And I think he's average at best anyways.
Well, and he could be a good bridge guy for you for the next 2 to 3 years while you figure out.
If they had a young guy, but they don't, is the funny
exactly.
thing. And if they have, they have the number 6 pick in the draft this year. So now it's like, okay, what is your goal? Did you send a third-round pick away for a bridge quarterback? Because if that's the case, that's expensive. Did you send a third-round pick away to try to build around Geno Smith? Okay, if that's the case, then you're probably going to take Ashton Ginty or a receiver 6th overall. But then what's going to happen in 5 years when Geno Smith isn't good? Or in 2 years when Geno Smith turns out to not be a good player anyways? I don't know. I think it's an interesting trade. I kind of like it for Seattle's side. Maybe I'm biased. I've never been a fan of Geno Smith. I think he had one really good year with the Seahawks and then a couple of mediocre years. And we'll see. I do like the reunion with Pete Carroll, though.
See, and I'm the opposite of you, bro. I like it for the Raiders. I don't know if I like it for Seattle.
How come?
What is Seattle doing?
Rebuilding.
You're going full rebuild.
Right. Well, so they cut Tyler Lockett. DK Metcalf traded. He has requested a trade, so you're probably going to get at least a second-round pick for DK Metcalf. They're asking a first and a third. They're not going to get that much because the other team would have to give a new deal. So that's a lot to ask. But regardless, it is a tough spot. It's not the perfect way to rebuild. But I think the Seahawks realized that they weren't close to competing where they were at, so it's time to just start over, I guess.
I think for the Raiders, you answer your biggest question coming into the offseason. Who's going to be a quarterback?
Yeah.
Who's your quarterback? What's going to happen at the quarterback position? You get some answers there, trading for Geno Smith. Now for the Seahawks, right, you mentioned Tyler Lockett. You mentioned DK. Their offensive coordinator was fired. Ryan Grubb was fired in the offseason.
He was bad.
You still have Jackson Smith and Jigba, which I think is a phenomenal piece.
He's good.
He's a very good piece. But you don't. What's your plan now at quarterback?
Yeah.
Right? You have Sam Howell on the roster, but let's be honest, Sam Howell.
So I saw some reports this morning that they're going to go all in on Sam Darnold.
Yeah, do you take a swing at Darnold? Do you take a swing at Justin Fields?
Yeah. It sounds like Sam Darnold. So it's like a domino effect. So Sam Darnold is the Seahawks. That's who they want to go after once free agency opens. It opens on Wednesday, but technically the legal tampering period begins on Monday. So that's when you'll see deals start to trickle in. So it sounds like the Seahawks are going to go after Darnold, which we'll see how that goes. So that would mean the Vikings could potentially be in for Aaron Rodgers.
I was just about to say that.
That's what the news was on the social media this morning. Saw some multiple reporters saying that. So sounds like that's the plan for those teams. I wouldn't trust going all in on Sam Darnold if I were anybody, whether it was the Seahawks or the Vikings. He had a good first 3 quarters of the season for Minnesota last year, but he really fell apart in their final 2 games.
The lights got too bright.
Very much so. But anyways, Seahawks are in a weird spot because I guess free agent quarterbacks, it's Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields. It's slim pickings out there. I wouldn't trust any of those guys to be a franchise quarterback. So it's going to be interesting.
I think Sam Darnold would be a good fit in Seattle.
I think that would be his best fit besides Minnesota.
Starting fresh.
Yeah.
Right? It's a new, and then plus you already have.
I would definitely want to go there over either of the New York teams.
Yes. 100%.
Or Cleveland.
I kind of hope Aaron Rodgers lands at the Giants, man.
See, I don't.
I think it'd be funny.
You hope for comedy's sake.
Yeah, for comedy's sake.
For Aaron Rodgers' sake, that would be a horrible move.
It would be a horrible move.
Because the Giants are one of the worst franchises ever besides the Jets.
I think if you're Aaron Rodgers, you end up with the Giants, you don't even have to move.
Right.
You just stay where you are. You just switch your colors.
I guess.
Yeah. You just
What's funny too is there was a clip when they were on the Hard Knocks. There was a Giants player talking trash to Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers said something like, "I've never even heard of you" or something. So that would be funny.
Well, hey, buddy, he's gonna be your teammate now.
So yeah, next Saturday show we'll have some big NFL news to talk about. We'll see if DK Metcalf gets traded. The Chargers released Joey Bosa, multiple-time Pro Bowler. That was a big move, 9-year vet. He has said in the past that he wants to play with his brother Nick in San Francisco. I don't know the logistics of that. We'll see what happens there. That would be cool, though. I always was sad that J.J. Watt never teamed up with T.J. I thought that would have been fun.
Well, I mean, everyone's always talking about J.J. coming back.
Oh, that's not going to happen. Too far gone there. But, yeah, Joey Bosa, a good player when he's healthy, but, man, he really struggles to stay healthy. And
that is true.
Now it sounds like the Chargers are working on an extension for Khalil Mack. So big move there that frees up like $23 million in cap space for the Chargers ahead of free agency. Any other moves you're on the lookout for?
Currently, no. I do want to mention Max Crosby, 3-year extension.
Oh yeah,
for $106.5 million.
Highest paid non-quarterback ever.
And I think that's great. He's probably the best piece the Raiders have at the moment. He's probably the best player the Raiders have at the moment, and so you want to build around Max, and I think that's a fantastic deal for Crosby.
Yeah. So now it's like, okay, are the Raiders trying to go all in right away because Geno Smith is 34? So I mean, they're clearly the worst team in that division with the Chiefs, Broncos, and Chargers all being playoff teams last year. It's going to be an uphill battle if the Raiders want to try and make the playoffs right away. So that's the part that doesn't really make sense to me. It feels like if you're the Raiders, by the time you actually build a playoff caliber roster, Geno Smith is going to be on his way out. But we'll see. Again, the Raiders pick 6th overall in the draft. That definitely puts them in play for whether it's Ashton Ginty or one of the top receivers like Ted McMillan or Travis Hunter, depending on what he wants to do. We'll see. That's an interesting move for the Raiders. I could see it backfiring. I could. Maybe that's just bias talking.
The Texans acquiring Christian Kirk.
Oh, yeah. That was an interesting...
I'm just curious what happens to Diggs.
Well, the Jaguars cut everybody.
Yes.
So that was funny. Diggs, I don't know if he's going to be brought back now. He's a free agent coming off a torn ACL. He's definitely past his prime. So yeah, I don't. Maybe Houston does bring him back because we talked like last week. Tank Dell's probably going to miss the whole year, so maybe Diggs comes back as the theoretical third wide receiver. But I mean, Nico Collins is your guy, and then Christian Kirk is a solid number 2, right? So
yes,
yeah. If you're Houston, you probably don't want to spend a lot of free agent money to bring Stephon Diggs back. So yeah, he probably goes elsewhere, maybe Dallas or something. Dallas freed up a lot of cap space.
Oh yeah, they restructured
some contracts there. So
yep, CD and Dak.
Much needed for the Cowboys.
I don't know what the Cowboys are going to do, man.
Oh yeah, they're stuck to Dak, especially after restructuring a contract. That makes it really hard to move off of them ever in the future. So yeah, they're all in on Dak and CD, trying to make a last push there. But I'm excited. I really do enjoy NFL free agency, even if there's not a ton of big fish in the pond or if the draft isn't as top-heavy as it has been in years past. I think all of this is super interesting because this is where you see some teams kind of panic or you see some teams kind of hit home runs and turn into contenders. Lastly, while we're talking NFL, there has been some chatter. The Titans might be moving off the first overall pick. Sounds like the Giants have been really interested in trading for the number 1 pick in the draft. That would be interesting because you would expect the Giants, if they were to do that, to probably take one of the top quarterbacks in the draft. Or maybe in free agency, they decide to go Aaron Rodgers.
They don't want the smoke. They don't want the scrutiny of the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, I guess. You're talking Tennessee?
As far as Tennessee goes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, well, if I'm Tennessee, and New York calls me up and says, hey, we'll give you our first-round pick this year, which is the 3rd overall pick, by the way, our first-round pick next year, and then Kayvon Thibodeau. He was a first-round pass rusher taken a couple of years ago. I'd take that deal any day if I was Tennessee.
It's not a bad deal.
No, you get a free first-round pick next year that's going to be top 5 from the Giants because they're always a top 5 pick now. As long as they've got Joe Shane over there.
I think it would be a good move. I think Tennessee has a lot of questions, has a huge question at quarterback.
Yeah.
I don't think Mason Rudolph, I don't think Will Levis is a long-term
not at all.
options. But at the same time, I don't know if they are fully bought into a Cam Ward or a Shedeur Sanders.
I think that's the biggest mistake you can make in the NFL is taking a quarterback just to take one.
Right.
Don't feel like you have to. If next year's quarterback class is going to be a lot better, get some pieces now. Get the New York Giants pick, which is going to be bad, or a good pick. They're going to be a bad team. Take that pick and run.
Then you get, potentially an extra player out of it that can ultimately come in and make a difference. Like you mentioned Thibodeau, and I think Thibodeau could be a good pickup for Tennessee.
Plus whoever you would take at number 3 this year, whether that's a pass rusher or Travis Hunter. Or maybe you still get a quarterback. I don't know. We'll see.
I just don't think that they're bought into the quarterbacks that are available this year.
No, I wouldn't be. Not that high. Not that high. No. All right, let's take a break. Coming up next, we'll talk RSL as we wrap up this show. Real Salt Lake, interesting game today. They play San Diego FC, the expansion franchise, the newest team in the MLS. We'll talk that next as we wrap this thing up. This is the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Wrapping up another edition of the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. I'm Christian Esparza, Alex Napoles with me. Alex, RSL taking on San Diego FC tonight, 7:30 first kick.
First time ever, right? This is the new expansion side. This is a new team coming into the league. This is the first time they come out to Sandy, first time they'll ever play this side. And Real Salt Lake, good bounce back performance last week, getting that 2-0 win over Seattle. And now they'll look to continue on that performance, hopefully getting 3 points against the new expansion side.
How does the expansion team work in the MLS? Do they do like an expansion draft?
They do. They do an expansion draft where you get to select 5 guys from other teams in the league, and then from there you're kind of on your own. You only get 5 players, which is interesting considering it's a 30-man roster. But then from there, you kind of have to figure out the rest of it. Obviously, there's the super draft, which is just the draft where you get like the college guys and the picks, and I think a lot of the expansion sides rely on that a lot. But then there's a lot of flexibility with expansion sides of being able to go out and make some big signings. San Diego necessarily hasn't made too many, but I think they're still a team that's gonna try to figure it out.
RSL 1-1 on the season, 1 win, 1 loss. San Diego FC 1 win, 1 draw. So we'll see what that looks like as RSL tries to find their footing again. In case you've missed it, ton of off-season moves for Real Salt Lake this season, and we'll see. It's probably going to be a little bit of an adjustment period as they try to figure out who their go-to guys are going to be. I know head coach Pablo Mastroeni was on with DJ and PK yesterday morning, and he was kind of talking about it's a lot different, but it's nice, like in training sessions and things like that, to not have a number one guy where it's like you can kind of trust anybody to step up and really, you know, you don't have to rely on just one person to carry your team. It's more so you can go out to these practices and it's like, oh yeah, so-and-so had a big game. Okay, let's play him minutes. We don't have to worry about our star player not getting their minutes.
Right. And I think ultimately Real Salt Lake will do what they can to bring in a guy who can fill in that role left behind by, your former star player. But right now, I think the team is doing a really good job of finding ways to score and finding ways to generate some offense without that number one guy. Forster Ajago, 2 games, 2 goals. We'll see if he can continue it tonight. The new guy, too, Ari Pule, the Australian striker, showed some good signs against Seattle last week. And so there's options there. I think they just need a little bit more time to adapt.
Again, that is a 7:30 first kick pre-match show at 6:30, as always, here on The Zone. And that's the only thing we have going on in the evening. So that'll be on 97.5 and 1280. Earlier in the day, though, coming up not too long after this, Utah State pregame show, 1:30, 2 o'clock tip-off at home in Logan. Senior night against Air Force as the Aggies try to end their regular season on a high note before they get into the Mountain West tournament.
They have to.
I was looking, there was some posts on social media. It looks like the seeding for the Mountain West tournament is all but wrapped up as far as the Aggies go, unless they knock on wood. Hopefully they don't, but unless they lose this game, it looks like they'll be winning. They'll be playing the winner of Air Force and UNLV.
As far as the bracket in the Mountain West.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's how the bracket is looking right now.
Again, I think we mentioned it a little bit earlier, Christian. I think they just need to finish the season off strong, finish it off with a win, and take some confidence into Las Vegas. Man, they need it right now, considering the last 2 games didn't go their way.
Much needed confidence, and it's just crazy. I mean, the confidence that this team played with at times throughout the season just was gone in their last 2 games, and I don't really know what the cause of that was. But I think it's important not to overreact. I think there was a lot of fan overreaction, people saying some not very nice things on social media. So you always hate to see that. Hopefully the players can keep that out of their heads and not let that affect them. But again, that is Utah State taking on Air Force, 2 p.m. tip-off in Logan, 1:30 pregame here on The Zone. Alex, you're going to be producing that, so
I'll be there.
Bring some good luck into the studio. All right, that's it for today. Oh, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say that's the hope.
That's the hope. Okay, thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week. This is the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.